Sometimes the easiest way to avoid what happened is to talk about how you reacted to it. You bring up the thing that hurt you. Now the conversation is about your tone. You ask why they lied. Now the conversation is about how intense you sound. You point out the pattern. Now the conversation is about your face, your timing, your attitude, your word choice, your volume. And after a few minutes, the original issue is gone. Not solved. Gone. Now you are trying to prove you were calm enough to deserve an answer. That is the trap. Picture this. Asher notices that someone promised to send an important form before noon. They did not send it. No message. No update. No quick, I forgot. Just silence. So Asher waits a few hours, then finally says, "Hey, I needed that form today. What happened?" The other person says, "Wow, why are you coming at me like that?" Now Asher pauses, because the question changed. The first question was simple: what happened with the form? The new question is whether Asher asked too sharply. So Asher softens it. "I'm not trying to come at you. I just needed it earlier." And it shifts again. "You always make me feel like I have to walk on eggshells." Now Asher is not talking about the missed form. Asher is defending whether he is hard to talk to. He tries again. "I'm just asking what happened." And now comes the line that makes the whole room tilt. "See, this is exactly what I mean. You can't even have a normal conversation." At that point, the original issue is barely visible. The missed form is sitting in the background while Asher's reaction is on trial. This pattern has a simple shape. You raise an issue. They redirect to your reaction. You defend the reaction. The issue disappears. For this video, call it reaction reversal. That is not a clinical term. It is just a useful name for a thing that happens in real conversations. The reaction becomes louder than the reason for the reaction. And once that happens, the other person does not have to answer the first point. They only have to keep judging the way you brought it up. Now, there is an important difference here. Tone can matter. If someone is yelling, threatening, insulting, cornering, or trying to intimidate someone, the reaction is part of the problem. Blind spot is not about pretending your delivery never matters. It is not about using, "but I had a point," as a free pass to be cruel. But there is a difference between, "I want to answer you, but I need us to lower the temperature first," and, "Because you reacted, I no longer have to answer what happened." One slows the conversation down so both people can talk. The other uses your reaction as an exit door. That is the difference to watch for. The first sign is that the original issue disappears. You start with something specific. You said you would call, and you did not. You repeated something I asked you to keep private. You made a joke after I told you it bothered me. Those are concrete. They can be answered. Maybe there is an explanation. Maybe there is an apology. Maybe there is a misunderstanding. But in reaction reversal, the concrete point gets covered fast. Now it is. Why are you so upset? Why are you bringing this up now? Why do you always make everything serious? Why are you acting like I am a bad person? Notice what happened. The conversation moved from the behavior to your response to the behavior. And if you follow that shift, you may spend the next 20 minutes explaining that you are not angry, not dramatic, not accusing them, not trying to start a fight. Meanwhile, the first point waits in the corner. The second sign is that only your reaction gets replayed. They can describe your expression in perfect detail. They remember exactly how your voice sounded. They remember the pause before you answered. They remember the word that felt unfair. But when you ask about the thing that started the conversation, everything gets blurry. I do not remember it that way. That is not the point. You are twisting it. I just know how you made me feel. Feelings matter, but feelings cannot become a shield that blocks every specific question. If they can replay your reaction frame by frame, but they cannot stay with the original behavior for 10 seconds, notice that. The third sign is that calm delivery still does not count. This is the part that makes people doubt themselves. Because the first time you think, maybe I did sound too sharp. So next time you plan it. You wait until a better moment. You speak slower. You use softer words. You say, I'm not attacking you. I just want to understand what happened. And somehow the reaction still becomes the problem. Now you are cold, or calculated, or acting superior, or using therapy language, or making a big deal out of nothing. That is when you learn something important. If every delivery is wrong, delivery was probably not the real issue. It was just the easiest place to move the conversation. Reaction reversal works because most decent people do not want to be unfair. If someone says, your tone hurt me, you want to check yourself. That is not weakness. That is conscience. The problem is when your conscience gets turned into a handle. Now, every time you raise an issue, you are pulled into a side trial about whether you raised it perfectly. And nobody raises hard things perfectly every time. People get nervous. People choose one clumsy word. People pause too long. People sound flatter than they meant to. People sound sharper than they meant to. That can be worth repairing. But imperfection in your delivery does not erase the thing that happened. Both can be true. You can say something imperfectly, and there can still be a real issue underneath it. That is the sentence to keep in your head. Both can be true. The mistake is accepting the hidden rule that only one thing can be discussed. Either your reaction was imperfect, so the original issue no longer counts, or the original issue counts, so your reaction cannot be mentioned. That is a false choice. A healthier conversation can hold both. Yes, I sounded frustrated. I can own that. And we still need to talk about what happened. That is the way out. Not a speech. Not a courtroom case. Just putting the first point back on the table. Try this. I can talk about my tone after we finish the first point. What are we doing about what happened? Or, I hear that you did not like how I brought it up. I am willing to come back to that, but I do not want the original issue to disappear. Or shorter. My reaction is one conversation. What happened is another. Which one are we handling first? The wording matters less than the structure. First, acknowledge without surrendering the whole topic. Second, separate the reaction from the original issue. Third, ask which specific point is being answered. If they are trying to repair, that structure helps. They may say, okay, you are right. I missed the form. I should have told you. Or, I understand why that bothered you. I also got defensive because of the way it came out. That is workable. It might still be uncomfortable, but at least both points are visible. If they are trying to avoid accountability, that structure gets in the way. Because now they cannot keep everything foggy. They have to choose. Are we talking about the form, the promise, the joke, the lie, or the boundary? Or are we only talking about the fact that I reacted? That question does not attack them. It just turns the lights back on. There is one more thing. Do not use this to become a machine. You are allowed to have a reaction. You are allowed to look hurt when something hurts. You are allowed to sound disappointed when someone disappoints you. You are allowed to pause before answering. The goal is not to become so calm that nobody can criticize your delivery. That is impossible. The goal is to stop letting your delivery become the only thing anyone is allowed to discuss. Because a reaction is information. It may need repair. It may need a calmer second try. But it is usually not the whole story. So if you bring up something specific and suddenly the entire conversation is about your tone, slow it down, name the two conversations, hold the first issue in view, and remember, you do not have to be perfectly calm for the original point to still matter. That is what a blind spot is. Not something hidden from you on purpose, just something you did not have the frame for yet. Now you do.